Hello everyone, this is Nathan.lawrence. I am a ninth grade English teacher at Commerce High School in Commerce, Georgia, and I had a request to just talk about my grading process for the essays in my classroom, and so I think the best way to do this is I'll just do a screen share and sort of walk you through this process. Now, my process is not incredibly, it doesn't require an incredible level of technological competence. However, I think it is sort of something that needs to be viewed from the highest scale first. So instead of just showing you how I grade, I'm going to walk you through the entire process of how I distribute and collect and then grade essays. This is a very, I think, modular process that would work for pretty much any school system. I think it's definitely going to be easier if you are a Google Classroom or a Google Apps for Education school. But I have done it in a school that was not. It's a little bit easier now than my current school where it is, but it can be done either way. So basically all you're going to need is Google Classroom or some sort of distribution method, a website called Google Keep, and then a Google account. So let's walk through this. So on my Google Classroom, when I assign an essay, what I do is I attach a Google Drive document or Google Docs document to it, and I have it set so that each student will get a copy. Now what I do is I basically just take the MLA template from Google Docs and I strip everything out of it, and it ends up looking like this. So my students, we run on our writer's workshop model when we write, so they end up handwriting 3 drafts and then they type up a draft at the end of it. So this is what they'll actually type, edit, polish, publish into. The important thing about this is not so much the MLA format, which is helpful to students because often they have a huge problem with it. But if we scroll down here, you will see that there is already a rubric preloaded. This is a very simple rubric that's sort of an adapted, stripped down 6+1. It's sort of a mishmash of a bunch of different stuff, but it's just sort of what I've settled on is what works for my students, but it could really be anything. So that is important because what will happen is that students, when they click on to start typing in their essays, they'll get something that already has the rubric preloaded, which really, really will help towards the end of the day. So I distribute it, I get it back, and then I don't have any dummy students in here, but I would have a big list of essays to grade. So basically my process is this. So if this is just the MLA template from Google Docs, but we'll pretend that this is a student. This is a student that I'm going to grade their paper. So if this is their paper sitting in front of me, so there's 2 things I need to do before I can get this running, okay? So first I need to go to add-ons, I need to go to get add-ons, and I need to search specifically for the words orange slice. And then you'll get this, all right? So you want to do orange slice teacher rubric, easy peasy. You'll add it. It'll say, do you want to do this? You just say, okay, blah, blah, blah. So in order to get orange slice to work, what you have to do is you have to basically make this in its own blank document. So if I make a new blank document, right, and I can just title this is going to end up being a rubric. So I just want to title this, we'll just call it new LBQ rubric. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to add-ons, orange slice, score rubric. And what it's looking for is to see if I have a rubric. And I don't, so it wants me to make one. So basically I'm just going to go through this. There are 1,000 different options on this. It's pretty well documented too, so there's a very solid FAQ page in here somewhere that is pretty easy to use. But basically, you can do what kind of performance levels you want. You can do what kind of, like you want them descending, ascending. I usually just I'll create my own. You select the categories. They have pre-made categories. I make my own because I'm cantankerous. And so normally I'll just say, I got this. And then basically you just hit create rubric. So what's going to end up happening is that it will spit out something that looks like this. As long as you have rubric categories up here and then stuff filled into this, it will recognize this on any document as long as you are logged into a Google account on which Orange Slice is installed, if that makes sense. So I can basically I'll just copy in what my normal rubric looks like. So if we look here, so if I copy this over, it ends up looking like this. I can delete this out. Nope, that's not how you do it. There we go. So then I get something that looks like, sort of a rubric. And so I'll get this. Now what I want to do is I want to save this and make sure that I know where this document is. I actually have a separate file or folder in my Google Docs that is just for rubrics. And I want to make sure I know where this is, and I just want to keep it with me. So then basically what I do is when I go back to set up my Google Classroom setup, when I make this document that students will type into, I will copy the rubric into here. And this is the most important part because this is pretty much what makes the whole thing go. Okay, so you've made a rubric, you make it however you want. It's a little finicky, but with a little bit of experimentation, it's actually pretty easy. It's just like a very basic spreadsheet kind of thing. So you end up with this. So let's say this is what we want to grade. So we now have the capability to score this on the fly very quickly with a rubric already pre-made, and we can get that out to students in a very, very timely manner. Okay, but let's first, of course, scoring isn't everything in essays, so we need to be able to leave feedback. Now, there is a built-in feedback component of Orange Slice, which I'll show you, where you can make comments based on each category of the rubric, and I use that sometimes, but I think that feedback is way more efficient in this kind of manner if you have feedback specifically tagged to where the mistake is. Because if you just highlight part of something, as we've all probably experienced, if you just highlight part of something and say, hey, you need to look for, edit for typos in here, they'll just be like, well, what's a typo? You know what I mean? So I like to make mine very targeted. So that is where the second element of this process comes in, which is a website called Google Keep. It's also an app. So basically, when you have a Google account, you have all these different services built into it, and one of them is Google Keep, and Google Keep is the note-taking service for Google, and it's called keep.google.com is the website, and it looks like this. So basically, what you can do in here is basically just use this to make a comment bank. You can see how I have these organized by format, introductions, transitions, conclusion, quotations, explanations. Now, I have these actually organized not holistically in terms of like categories, but more like physically where they'll be on the paper in that order. So like format's the first thing you can usually look at, and then in order, introduction, transition, or this is not the order they'll appear when I show you in a second, but basically it's like introduction, quotations, explanations, transitions, conclusion, because that's kind of the order in which we hit them as we read down a paper. It's relatively helpful to create them in that order, I have found, but you don't have to. So basically all you have to do this is you just click up here on, you click up here, not on take a note, but on list, and then you can just title list and just type stuff in. It actually does a very good job of copying over from Word. So if you have a bulleted list in Word, like you already have a comment bank or whatever, you can just copy this right in, or you can just write it out by hand. So why is that relevant? Okay, so I'm logged into my teacher account here, and I'm logged into my teacher account over here on what I'm going to grade. So what I can do is I can go to Tools, Keep Notepad. This is totally built into Google Docs, pre-built in for you. You don't have to do anything to do this. And then I will get this, right? So now, in order, I have all of these comment banks I want to do. So all I have to do, let's say he has a problem in his introduction, or this student has a problem in their introduction, and they have their thesis divided over 2 sentences. Okay, that's a pretty common error I get. So all I got to do is select where the problem is, Control-Alt-M, or you can hit the little plus button with the little comment thing on it, and you end up with that, and boom. Now, I will still do specific comments throughout the paper, but since these canned comments come in my voice from me and are consistent throughout the class, they are really good sort of guideposts for students. And it's one of those things where I have found that since I'm using these comments over and over, it gets to the point where students, when they see the comment, they know, okay, this is the problem. And so using this system, what I can do is basically get 3 or 4 canned comments and 2 or 3 pre-made comments very quickly. So generally speaking, my canned comments will be about format. They'll be about, do you have the components of an essay? And so when it comes to argumentation, that is not like this is a weak argument or this argument doesn't have enough or whatever, that's when I will do specific comments. I have in the past created canned comments per assignment, like, hey, you proved that this was dramatic irony, but you didn't prove how dramatic irony increases the comedy, stuff like that. But generally speaking, it's like, oh, you didn't prove, like, connect this back to your thesis. So I can just type, like, this doesn't Whoops, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes 2 mistakes. All right, that's fine. All right, so then, we can end up with 4, 5, 6, 3, depending comments very quickly. And, students always, I found, since I put so many comments, if I ever get to the point where I put 1 or 2, and then I'll just put another comment that's like, hey, this is really good. This is excellent work. And that, for some reason, they really respond to that. So, you set it up, you have your comments, so let's talk about the actual grading. So the thing that's awesome about Orange Slice is it does basically all the work for you. So as long as you have this rubric copied and pasted into this document that you've set up, you can just hit score rubric, and then you'll end up with this. So I can just run through. This is a very rough rubric that's sort of just more grades, since I'm working with 9th graders. A lot of it grades like, is this present in your paper? And I'll do a more formalized rubric later on through the process of writing these papers. So okay, introduction is good, thesis is like decent. Oh, look, it's in parallel, good, excellent. And then support. Oh, well, you had quotes, but you didn't integrate them properly. Whatever, lose little points there. Okay, analysis is good. We kind of just go down through this. Okay, conventions are good, MLA is good, which it should be because I already set it up for you, but whatever, people still lose points on it. We get to a conclusion. Oh, you had conclusion. It was the right number of paragraphs. Okay, or right number of sentences. Okay, yeah, you sort of introduced a new idea. Cool. So then, basically, we can either do, so at this point, we've filled out where we want the points, but there's still some things we can do modification-wise. So, for instance, if we want to do grade adjustments, we can do like extra credit, late penalty, plagiarized penalty, etc. Or you can make your own. Like one that I will do pretty often is I'll just say like not eligible for revision. So basically, if my kids get everything turned in on time through the writing process, I let them rise all the way through the end of the semester. And so what I'll do is I'll just say not eligible for revision, and then click other, and then put 0. Although sometimes this doesn't work, but it should. Yeah. Anyway, actually undo. There we go. So then we can also do, once we're done with that, we can also do, if we click back in grades, we can click feedback. And now that we put the grades in, we can also put specific notes. Like, so if I wanted to do a specific conventions note, I could say, you really need to work on, and if I'm feeling really fancy, I might copy and paste in a link to a Google document of, our compound sentences lesson from the past or whatever. I don't have that set up right now, so I'm not going to do it. But, the possibilities are pretty much endless. So then basically all we do is we just hit process grade. It'll chew on it for a second, and then it'll get this. So the cool thing about this is it will actually rename it so that it is named the appropriate grade. It'll put the name in there and say so-and-so graded 89 points, 89%, and then the title. And then you can see they sort of just have their pre-boxed out rubric in here for them. And then down here, we've got conventions point, we've got convention stuff, and then you'll notice that we've got it tagged May 3rd. And so since I run on a writer's workshop model and my kids do a lot of revision, what's really nice is what I can do is I can come back onto this page, go through the whole same process again, and then I can come back to grades at a later time. I'll turn Fido back off real quick. I can come back to grades at a later time. So let's say this kid oh, you fixed your thesis. Good. What else did we take points off on? Okay, let's say this kid got their quotes properly integrated. So we can go to support, and then it's like, oh, good job, buddy. So we can do two things. We can either process grade, which will just pop a new grade out down below May 3rd, or we can process growth, which I think is interesting, another fun feature. So if we click here, what we end up getting spit out is you get it, and it'll show you where things have moved. So oh, look, you had 10 points before, and now you have more points, right? And so we have growth, right? And then we can process, if we want it to change the number, we can actually process grade again, and it'll bump the number up. So yeah, this is my workflow. I have found that once you get into this workflow and you have it set up correctly in Google Classroom, and you have all sort of the dependencies set up on your computer, that you can grade essays very, very quickly using this method. I have done 20, 30 essays in one planning period. I mean, given that is usually about an hour's worth of work, or a little bit more than that, an hour and 20 minutes worth of work, but still, that's way faster than the way I was doing it before. And this sort of automates the process so that as soon as I hit as soon as I hit send back to the kids, they have all their feedback. They have everything they'll ever need to revise, to do their first set of revisions, and they don't have to worry about it. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions about this, I'll go ahead and throw my school email down below, and feel free to reach out because I'd love to talk to you about it. Thanks.